Last video of the night. Double book review for JRR Tolkien's, as far as I read it. The Children of Hürin, as well as Piotr Kropotkin, I don't know, his Conquest of Bread. All right, let's start with Children of Hürin. That's what I read first. And I was really interested in it because it's been a long, long time since I've read anything by Tolkien. And he's like the godfather of Western fantasy. In fact, like he's also the godfather of Dungeons and Dragons and a variety of other like fantasy tropes. He's the high fantasy guy. I mean, would George R.R. Martin have written A Song of Ice and Fire without Tolkien? Yes, he would have. Would it have been the way that it is? Probably it would be very different. All right. And why this particular book? Here's the interesting thing. The Children of Hürin is actually one of the earliest works. In fact, some would say the earliest, like, published prose work of George R.R. Martin, because it started before he was a professor, I believe, a doctor, as a translation of, I believe it's Hathor the Hapless, which is, I forget which language in particular, but it's Nordic or Scandinavian, a Scandinavian myth, epic poem, I believe, about a guy where things don't go too well no matter what he does, and he's cursed and he ends up freeing a dragon. And Hürin is kind of like, in Tolkien's universe, a reimagining of that. Also ends up slaying a dragon. And about how this person could have done the right thing. He could have been so much greater than he was, and he tried to do the right thing and he still failed, and then what that means for the grander story of the fight against the devil stand-in in this universe, the force of all evil, Melkor. And I thought that it was nice. In terms of the specific way that the prose is delivered, it's balanced. I'm sure that you might have guessed, having heard the way that I speak and communicate. But personally, I like my prose to be very purple. I want to know all of the freckles on their face and their placement and which ones are the biggest and like which constellation of the sky it reminds the character of, and like maybe go into a diatribe about where they were out in the sun too long to get those freckles, and all the rest. Oh, and their feelings about the freckles, of course, or their lack of feelings about the freckles. And you can go deeper and deeper down that line. But the closer and closer you get to, like, what's that other guy that everybody reads in America as part of their education? He wrote the book about catching the fish. I'm too tired. Hemingway. The closer you get to the Hemingway-ish, or even the Rhode Island horror guy who was really racist, the closer you get to them, the less I'm into it. Yes, we can fill it in with our imaginations and stuff, but take me on a trip. I mean, I don't think that you can go into enough detail about a book and finish the book and not leave out details. So why not? The more the merrier. You as the author know how much you want to include. I would have wished that there were more internal dialogue of Hürin's struggles and like these fundamental, like momentous occasions in his life where he got separated from his mother. Well, his mother sent him away because of like a pride thing that affected her, and how he left the company of the elves because of a variety of things. And I will go no farther than that, because then you're like going way too deep into the book, and I don't want to give spoilers. So overall, I think that it was worthwhile to read. Oh, I should probably say, it was one of the earliest things he did, but also technically one of the last books that he never finished, because he worked on this journey of the children of Hürin, mostly this one particular child of Hürin, Turin, throughout his entire life, and still, it wasn't published until he was dead. It was published posthumously. And what this means for Tolkien, or Tolkien's life as a whole, as someone who was very into building these vaguely English, vaguely Germanic, mostly Germanic, and anti-French, anti-Romance in a lot of ways, languages that so much stemmed from and then stemmed back through his creation of this story of the children of Hürin, and even like the genealogies and their names and how they developed, and like what is meaning. Oh, what's life if you can't laugh at yourself, right? What is meaning? All right, so I'm also tired. I didn't take any substances like that video I made where I'm crying in the thumbnail. Then I was drunk. And I've also, I believe, overcome what I was going through at that time. So yeah, I think that if you participate in the Western high fantasy canon, that it's a very valuable book to read. I don't think that it's a must-read like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but I think that it's valuable to like touch at the heart of Tolkien and like where this all has sprung from. Then we get to the other book that I read, which I will say is essential reading for anybody who is interested in politics, or personally, I would say it's essential reading for everybody. Pyotr Kropotkin's The Conquest of Bread, which is not available in my public library, but then again, I live in the United States, which is very much so anti-anarchist. I mean, there are degrees to which states can be anti-anarchist, I suppose. And it was really sweet, like to the point where I posted recordings of me reading passages out. This is a very old book. I think it came out after Marx. Yeah, it did. It came out after Marx did his whole thing, and I think after he passed away too. But before the Russian Revolution. I think it was after the Sunday where the priest led a peaceful protest in front of the palace and they got shot down. But long story short, this was before any of the major developments with all of the Soviets happened. And I also think that this book was valuable to me because I had to read a lot about French history, like the biggest leftist push in the world at that time was the Great Revolution. If you want to argue about how great it was in France at the turn of the 18th century, I believe, the one that included the Reign of Terror. Like you could say that there's a variety of republics and revolutions that happened in this time, but they all happened sequentially one after another, and then you switch back to the king. It makes sense to me to lump them all in one period. I think that that's valuable to learn about, and all of the different schools of thought that tie into that. And another funny thing about this book is that Pyotr Kropotkin, and yes, I am saying his name out like that because it is fun for me as a person who normally speaks English to say. I think it has a lot of funk to it. It's a nice funky name from my perspective. He had not a lot of imagination in terms of what industry could do for humanity. And he went through all these details for how within reasonable means people could calculate things out to work in a world that doesn't have profit-driven industry. And I think that is nice. Annoying to read through because it's like, yeah, numbers this, numbers that, numbers this. It's important, I guess, but maybe you could just have it at the end of the book, especially since people's ability to produce and automation today is so much greater. Like, Kropotkin, Mr. Kropotkin, I don't know, he was talking about how greenhouses were being introduced in Great Britain at the time, and about the wonders of the steam engine. So, yeah. Beautiful stuff. Please, you can get it for free on the Anarchist Library. Is it the most useful piece of anarchist literature? No, but I believe it has a dang heck of a lot of heart, and it should be, it's a must read. Like, in the same way that, sure, you can be a communist without reading the Communist Manifesto, but you really want to be a communist that hasn't read the Communist Manifesto, even if you're not a Marxist. I mean, it's kind of important information for you to have firsthand experience with, no? All right, same thing goes for The Conquest of Bread. I hope I've said the name. That's what it's about. It's about giving the people what they need and reframing what revolution is as putting all people first, not some people in the cities, not about some revolutionary group saying, okay, we're in control now and we're going to do things better, wink, wink, but you do this and you do this and you do this and you do this, and everybody's segmented. About forming an international community where each community is as strong as it can be, like he was referring to about bringing women into the mix, that women are equals to men, not just because of, and about, he was talking about how, and this is crazy, this is in the 1800s, women are in a lot of ways nurtured to be in fewer leadership roles than men, and to be caretakers and all of that. And if we had the ability to give them more, then they would not be stuck in that path. And I think that's really interesting from the perspective of a lot of people say that the beginning of hierarchy, and thus the beginning of fascist thought, begins with the false, well, yeah, I'll go ahead and say it. Like, I personally am too tired right now to work out all the intricacies of this, but I'm going to trust the false dichotomy of men and women. Yeah, like, and he was talking about reproductive labor. He was talking about free trade and about free associating people and a revolution from the people, by the people, not some subset of people, about people being loud. And so us loudmouths have a use in this, and about freedom of knowledge and about trying to do the best we can. Like, yes, to have a utopian vision and work towards it. And this is the idea of unity and means and ends is so fundamental to anarchist thought. It's worth reading. It's sad that at the end, or I forget where in the book, he said, I believe we'll have achieved this within 200 years. That breaks my heart a little bit. But we have to keep working because it's the right thing to do. And we can take joy. It's not like life as it is isn't beautiful. It's not like life as it wasn't beautiful just because there were things that needed to be fixed. If anyone who suffered says, I want to die, this isn't right anymore, I want to give them my strength, as much strength as I'm able to give them. But I really don't think they're making the right decision. I mean, they make the decision to go, they go. It's their life. I can't stop them. But please keep trying. Life, it's worth it. It's worth it. And there will be people who will be there for you. Even if I can't be one of them, I'm a weak person. I wish I could be. And there will, just to keep trying. All right. I could not give it any less than a 9 out of 10. It's it's essential reading. As for the other book, I mean, if you want to give it an out of 10 score, I'll give it a medium 6 out of 5. 6 out of 5. 6.5. 6.5 out of 10. All right. Obviously, I need to go to bed. This was my last video of the night. This is not going to do well on the algorithm. But also, it's not going to do well on the algorithm if I release absolutely nothing. This will reach someone. And even if it doesn't, if these ideas are the truth, then they will appear in someone else. I just got to do what I can do. Wishing you all peace and love, under the assumption that this one person with a good heart that I follow is following me. Ditto. Have a great night.